Okay, so welcome to everybody. And today we will be discussing about the environmental impact assessment. So the first question is, what is EIA? So when we talk about EIA, it is Environmental Impact Assessment. And the Ministry of Environment and Forest has taken out a notification in this respect, which first came in 1994 and subsequently it came in 2006. So what is basically an EIA? It's a tool to assess the impacts or implication, maybe environmental, social, of any development projects and programs that we are undertaking. So it's a tool to assess the impacts, and it's the process to influence the concept design so that the impacts of any project that comes up are visualized and preventive actions taken so that the environment is not degraded. So when we talk about the environment, it does not mean only the air and water quality. It means it also contains the impact on the flora fauna. It contains on the impact on the biodiversity. It contains impact on the natural groundwater flow, hydrogeology of the area, soil water contamination. Anything you name, it needs to be covered when we talk about an EIA, that is environmental impact assessment. So in totality, if you look, it is a mechanism where it's an integrated approach is there, where public participation is there to look into any project which comes up and to see its impacts. So when we talk about the environmental impact assessment, when any needs to be done, so what is the outcome? The outcome is the environmental clearance. So what is environmental clearance? Our environmental clearance can be said that is a sort of permission from the regulatory authority. It can be the Central Ministry of Environment and Forest, or it can be in the state, the local assessment committees, the CR, which are known as, to give any clearance for development of any project, new project, which falls under the purview of the EIA notification 2006, imposing certain conditions so that the environmental impact is minimized and the impact to other resources is reduced. Any project which a developer wants to make, it can be industrial, it can be port, it can be road, it can be highway, it can be dams or reservoirs, or even the building projects with the large area need to have the environmental clearance from the regulatory authority. Now the question comes, why projects need environmental clearance? So whenever any project comes up, it has impacts on the environment. We may not feel it. Any project, even a building is being constructed, we excavate the ground. We go dig the soil. And in the process, you create air pollution. In case we go below the water table, when we go for the foundation of the building, a multi-story building, it impacts the groundwater recharge. It impacts the groundwater flow. So aquifer can be damaged. So any project that we have creates impacts while it is in the construction stage. Then subsequently, it creates impact when it is in the implemented now. Any project, any industry, when it is implemented, it starts producing material. It starts using raw material, fuel, all this, and in the process starts air pollution, water pollution, solid waste, and all these things. Besides, number of trucks bring the raw material, number of trucks carry the product, so they create pollution. So any project, both in the construction phase as well as in the operational stage, has impact on the environment, has impact on the flora fauna, has impact on the biodiversity of the area. So that's why any projects which has impact needs to take environmental clearance. Because once these impacts, if are not identified and prevented, they can lead to a greater environmental damage. like we had the accident in LG Polymer. So in case it was specified or identified in the mitigative measures, yes, that in case such things happen, what need to be done, the damage could have been minimized. Because accidents can happen, but the damage could have been minimized. But in case a good EIA was there, a good mitigative plan was there, which is an outcome of the environmental clearance which anybody takes. So it's very important that any project which comes up needs to have environmental clearance so that the impacts on the environment are known, the mitigating measures that need to are required for abatement and control of pollution are there. And third thing is that the awareness is there that in case such accidents happen, what need to be done and what are the preventive actions need to be taken. So EIA gives opportunity to the proponent to have a preparedness of the mitigating measures and the actions required to control pollution. So that's why look now, environmental clearance thus ensures that impacts are identified and prevention of mitigating measures are designed to be in place. So when we talk about any project, so when do we need environmental clearance? So if you see in the project cycle, we have the planning stage where the project is planned. Then we have the operational stage, and then we have the construction phase, and then comes the operation phase. When we are talking of planning and designing the project, it is after that, yes, we need to have environmental clearance. Because when we talk about planning and design, we talk about the area or the place where the plant will be established. The first thing and foremost is that whether the site is suitable for the plant. So the EIA actions starts from the planning stage, that yes, where the plant is to be established, what is in the neighborhood, how it will be impacting. So it starts from that place. And that's why we have different steps in the environmental impact assessment regime, which need to be followed for taking any permission. So how we can get environmental clearance? The question is how. So when we talk about the environmental clearance, we say that a study needs to be conducted, which is known as environmental impact assessment. This is a study covering entire season, at least three months in a year. Monitoring needs to be done for both air, water, soil, besides studying the flora fauna existing in that specific area, the wildlife existing in that area, the neighborhood, and the impacts of the activities of the industry on the neighborhood. These are all well documented, that why the necessity, what is the technology that the industry is bringing, what will be the impacts due to the transportation, what will be the impacts due to the operation, where the water consumption, water will be drawn, where the wastewater will be discharged, how the industry will take care of the air pollution generated, the noise pollution generated, the soil contamination, the solid waste generated. Every aspect is to be considered. How the pollutants that are released are dispersed in the atmosphere, how the concentration of these dispersed pollutants impacts the nearby impact zone, that means the area where the influence of the plant activities can be there. Impacts on the flora fauna, if there is a forest, how it will be impacting the forest and the wildlife there. So it takes into account everything. And besides that, it also takes into the public consultation, which we'll be discussing later on. And the outcome of this study is submitted to the regulatory authority. And at the center level, it is the Ministry of Environment, various committees constituted by the Ministry of Environment and Forest. And at the state level, it is the State Environmental Impact Assessment Authority or State Assessment Authority, depending upon the size of the project we'll be discussing also. So after this, the projects are clear. The environmental clearance regime in India is governed by the Environmental Impact Assessment Notification 2006. Prior to 2006, we had the 1994 notification, which talked about EIA. So many changes were incorporated in notification of 1994, and the 2006 notification came. And now the 2006 notification is also under revision, and the draft notification was put for public consultation. The public views were accepted, and now the last date is over, and now the ministry is reviewing the comments, the observation received on that before they finalize the new notification 2020, which is an amendment or modification of the 2006 notification. The question is, which projects need environmental clearance? Because we have so many projects, and if we start giving EIA to every project, it will become a gigantic task. So the notification specifies certain projects which need clearance. There is a schedule which talks about various projects like the power plants, the distilleries, the sugar industries, the petrochemicals, the refineries, pulp and paper sector, steel industries, and such pharma sector, many such sector which need clearance. It is well established in the notification schedule, yes. Any project which is covered in the notification and needs to go for expansion, it needs to go for modernization, will need to have a fresh clearance required because impact will change. Any industry which needs to change its product mix, like pharma sector, it is manufacturing today hydrochloroquine, and tomorrow it wants to start ciprofloxacin or something else, then it needs to, because the process remains same, the ingredients vary, so it needs to take permission from that. But recently, certain modifications or amendments have been issued by the ministry where such changes are acceptable within a limit specified in that. So many industries may not require to come for the EC in case of product mix change, in case they are meeting the norms that are prescribed in the notification with or the circulars which have been issued under the EIA notification. Now the whole process of EIA, when we talk, comprises 4 steps. That is the screening, the scoping, public consultation, and appraisal. But before that, it's very important that which are the projects which are covered under this. So that means the categorization of the projects. So under categorization, if a certain sectors of industries are covered, that yes, these sectors need to have EIA or EC, EIA to be conducted and EC to be taken, then they need to be categorized under either as a new project or expansion project. And whether these projects require environmental clearance if they are falling within the notification of EIA. So the projects again are categorized under category A and B. So for the category A is the Ministry of Environment. Committee is constituted by Ministry of Environment at the central level are responsible for granting the approval. And in case of category B projects, is state level committees which have been constituted are responsible for granting the permission. So now if these projects fulfill certain conditions, they come under category A or category B, and then they have to comply with all the conditions which are specified in the EIA notification, and then before they can apply for the environmental clearance. And when we say environmental clearance, we say prior environmental clearance, because no project is allowed to start or initiate any activity at the site without obtaining the prior environmental clearance. So any project which comes up without taking the EC and starts the activities, it becomes a violation case. That means the industry has violated the norms and it needs to be penalized under the violation norms specified. Now, when we talk about the projects A and B category, so what are the projects which fall into A and what are the projects which fall into the B category? all the projects which are located within 10 kilometers from the boundary of protected areas notified under the wildlife are treated as category A projects. All projects which are falling within the CP areas. Now, this should be 42, not 29. Is a mistake. 42 critically polluted areas. So they all fall under the category A projects. Any project which is coming in the notified eco-sensitive area, like Mahabaleshwaram, Doon Valley, Dahanu, such areas which have been notified by the ministry as eco-sensitive zone, they are all covered under the category A project, though they may be under category B project. And then all the projects along the interstate boundaries and international borders are under the category A projects. All category A projects need to be referred to the ministry at the central level. All category B projects are to be referred to the state environmental impact assessment authorities at the state level. And these projects are cleared at the center and the state level by committees constituted by the center, having an experts, sector experts, who review the projects and give their consent or recommendation for whether the project need to be cleared or not. And in case not to be cleared, then what action need to be taken by the industry so that it can be granted the environmental clearance. Now, when we say the categorization of projects, the projects, if you see projects and the schedule, the projects are categorized under category A and category B. Like if you see the mining and mineral projects, if it is more than 50 hectares of mining lease, it is categorized under A. But asbestos mining, irrespective of the mining area, is categorized under category A. Any project which is less than 50 hectares is under mining lease, is categorized under category B. So in the notification, it was less than 5 hectares, but now all the projects, even less than 5 hectares, are also covered for EC. They also need to have an environmental clearance. When we talk about the power plants, any projects greater than 5 megawatts using coal, lignite, naphtha, or gas is categorized under category B2. And all the projects more than 5 megawatt and less than 500 megawatt are categorized under B2. So now you see we have the differentiation between even the category B1 and B2 also. Same happens in nearly all the categories. Even the highway project, if you see, expansion of national highway greater than 100 kilometers, involving additional right of way or land acquisition greater than 40 meters on existing alignments and 60 meters on realignments. So they come under category A, but otherwise all come under category B project. State highway expansion in hilly terrain, above 1000 meter land, or they come under category B. So that the state authorities can clear these projects as compared to the bigger projects where the central approval is required. Now we have 4 phases or 4 steps in the process of granting environmental clearance. So categorization, we have seen that we have the projects under category A and category B. And under category B, they are further categorized as category B1 and B2. So if we see if the projects fall under category B1, it requires to follow all the 4 steps of environmental clearance. But if it is categorized under category B2, it can be directly taken for appraisal. So the projects step number 2 and step number 3 are not required. Now, once the screening has been done, that means the project has been categorized, the proponent has to follow the scoping process, where they have to submit their application for terms of reference. There is a specific form in which they have to submit their application, and if the application is accepted, then the proponent is given terms of reference. That means what are the studies he needs to get conducted depending upon the location of the project and the sector activities of the project. So they need to have in many times additional studies conducted besides the general conditions of terms of reference. So these need to be informed to the proponent within a period of 60 days. Or otherwise, if he's not informed, then the project proponent also submits some terms of reference that he will be following it. So they are considered as accepted. So all projects which are, there are many projects which are specified in Schedule 8, Item 8 of the schedule, they don't need scoping. And will be appraised on the basis of the form they submit only. So they don't need to have a terms of reference. Like in earlier notification, projects with less than 20,000 square meter area, building projects, they could get directly the environmental clearance without going the process of term scoping process. So there are such activities where scoping is not required and the proponent can move further. So once the terms of reference is granted, so we have the two steps left. If you see, the public consultation, the preparation of draft EIA and EMP report, public consultation, and the appraisal. So based on the terms of reference, the draft EIA report is prepared and the public consultation takes place. Now, what is a public consultation? Public consultation is a process to ascertain the concerns of local. That means whenever a project is coming up, there will be neighborhood stakeholders, like the farmers, it may be the local residents, who are the stakeholders because they are the person who are impacted by the activities of the industry or any such project which is coming up. And their views need to be considered because they have a stake in that project, because they are in the impact zone and they are impacted by the activities that are going on. This public hearing or consultation has to be done at the site or in its proximity. And responses of all the people who are present, the stakeholders, need to be taken in writing and need to be considered. The observations, the responses, or the stakeholders need to be considered in the report, and solution has to be given to those issues and challenges that the stakeholders have raised in the report. If you talk about the public consultation, even the Rio Declaration says that yes, is a basic principle of wide publicity, that all the public opinion needs to be taken because they have all the right for the access to information and opportunity to participate, because these are the people who are actually suffering or impacted by the project which is coming up. So hence, what is imbibed in the EIA notification 2006 is also reflected in the Rio Declaration, which talks about public consultation, taking the opinion of the public, the stakeholders who are impacted by the project, and so that they can speak of their issues, they can speak of their apprehensions, and the project proponent needs to address all these challenges which the people feel. Public hearing also is a forum to provide a decentralized democratic space, because here the public are given an opportunity to participate in the regulatory process. Because when you talk about the environmental clearance, it's the regulatory process, and when they are allowed to participate, that they become a stakeholder, they become a party to that in the decision making. So they feel oneness with the project, they feel part of the project. So because they have an opportunity to interact face to face with the authorities, they have an opportunity to interact with the project proponent, put up their views, put up their opinions so that they are heard, their grievances are heard. And it's very important that yes, such public consultation is required, because this fulfills the commitment to sustainable development, environmental justice when we talk, or participatory governance, or even the following the principle of natural justice. Because otherwise, these stakeholders never get an opportunity to participate in the development of any project. So public hearing provides them an opportunity to put their views in face-to-face with authorities face to face with the project proponent and hear the views of the project proponent, the authorities, that how the challenges, the observations, or the apprehension of these there will be addressed. That's a very important thing it becomes. Besides face-to-face consultation, it also provides a platform to the stakeholders, to the government authorities also, to bring up the relevant concerns on environment and the social factor, that how this industry coming up or a project coming up will benefit the locals, how it will be impacting the locals. So that's very important, that yes, public has to feel oneness with the project, and unless they are satisfied, then it talks about the issues relating to the compensation, the issues related to the employment, health considerations are also addressed during the public hearing. Because this is a forum where they put the views that what type that they need a job, when the industry is coming, the benefit should go to the locals also, how it can go, and how the coming out of the industry in that area help them to develop the area, improve their economy, improve their social status, and all this. And the public can question the development. Yes. Why it is required? What is the technology? Or what are the mitigating measures taken? What will happen to the soil due to the pollution arising from the industry? What will happen to the production due to the impacts of the environmental issues, the challenges coming from the industry? So all these issues are raised during the public hearing, which provides a platform to the stakeholders to have a face-to-face interaction with the project proponent as well as the government employees, and to get a sort of assurance, yes, that how their observations, their grievances, their apprehensions will be addressed by the project proponent. So once opinion sharing takes place, it brings confidence in the stakeholder, it brings the confidence in the public about the necessity of the project, the responsibility of the project proponent and the authorities all together. It gives an ownership in the decision making, that the public feels, yes, I have raised this issue which has been addressed, so I'm a part of that. Besides that, when the project proponent gives assurance, it makes accountability. It becomes, and since all this documentation, all the discussions are recorded and videographed, it brings transparency in the system, which is very important. There are still many challenges in the public hearing, but still a lot of progress has been made and lot need to be done to bring what we talk, the efficiency, efficacy, and transparency. Yes, many challenges have been addressed and many issues are faced while going for public hearing and need to be addressed further. This public hearing gives an opportunity of a two-way interaction, that is between the project proponent, from the project proponent to the stakeholders, and the stakeholder to the project. And it will help in better quality decisions, because the proponent is aware of the challenges, is made aware of the challenges, and the stakeholders, the residents, are able to put their views and get an assurance from them. It provides an opportunity to address public concerns, and so that the project can operate with smoothly with public support and assistance. Because any project, if it is coming, if it is not having a cordial relation with the local stakeholder, it is impossible for the project to operate because of the challenges they face. It provides a medium to assess the project's likely damage, because when we are having a discussion, one-to-way, face-to-face discussion with the stakeholder, and the issues and the challenges are raised, so it provides an opportunity for the stakeholders to raise the issues, how the projects will damage the social requirement, the environmental damage, and how they need to be addressed. Because when we talk about the forest area taking place, so the tribals are affected because the livelihood is impacted. So how these issues will be taken into consideration while the project is coming up, and how they will be benefited along with other benefits of the project. Even the Supreme Court has recognized the need for such public opinion and sustainable development. And they have asked that a balance need to be maintained for that, so that the people are not left of the advantage of the economic growth, and neither the economic growth is stalled on account of petty interest. So development needs to be there, but it needs to be a sustainable development, environmentally sustainable development, helping the inhabitants of the benefits accruing from the project is two-way. Even in the case of forest dwellers, the Supreme Court is very clearly that their opinion be considered before forest land are diverted, because they are dependent on the livelihood, for their livelihood on the forest only. So that's why in the forest case, another hearing is held with all the people living, living in the forest area, tribals and all this, and their interests need to be safeguarded as part of that. So when we talk about the public hearing, so what it put in the public hearing? The public hearing, the document prepared by the EIA consultant is put for the public. Now, what is this document? What does it contain? It contains the entire impacts of the project, the impacts of the movement of the raw material, the movement of the material, the operation of the industries. It looks into the mitigating measures. It looks into the technological aspects. It looks into the biodiversity impact. It looks into the flora fauna, and it looks into the predictions that yes, how far the impact will be there on the project and what are the mitigating measures taken. Yeah. So these reports which have been prepared are placed in the public hearing. So once the reports are ready, the project proponent provides the report to the member secretary of the environmental impact assessment of committees which have been constituted either at the state level or the center level. And then this notification is issued for the public hearing in the local languages and near the site of the project, which is generally chaired by the district magistrate. All the meetings are chaired by district magistrate, and the views of the public are taken. It's are recorded, video recording is there, and a complete summary is prepared, complete chronology is prepared, where each and every issue raised by the stakeholder need to be addressed. And once this is done, this is a time period specified that yes, these activities need to be completed within 30 days. And once this is done, the report is submitted. The project proponent is required to submit the report to the appraisal now to the committees for their consideration. All these public hearings, recording or proceedings are summarized, recorded, and after signature of the district magistrate are sent or need to be forwarded to the committees which have been constituted for granting the. So when we talk about the appraisal, now after all these views of the public have been taken into consideration, the environmental impact report are finalized. And then they are submitted to the committee at the central or the state level. Then the state level committees or the central level committees have a presentation of the project activities. And here's the views of the expert members, and needs to clear the project. Now the project may be cleared, it may not be cleared. If the recommendations are accepted, yes. If the recommendations are not accepted, the project may be returned back for improvement, or if the committee feels that the study has not been conducted properly, or the facts are not being highlighted, or there are other gaps in the data, the project can be returned back to the proponent with a recommendation to either to have a fresh study conducted, or if the gaps, if the deficiencies are not very big, to bridge the gap deficiencies, come back But there's a time period specified that this need to be cleared within the specified time period. For each and every activity, a well-established time period is there where all the project's proponents need to be cleared. Now, when the projects are cleared, certain conditions are imposed which relate to the type of the project, which relate to the activities of the project, the area where the project is established. Project proponents are required to submit regular compliance report. And these copies of the documents can be given to any person who wants to have it or are to be displayed on the website of the regulatory authority. Now, what are the type of conditions which are imposed? Now, they generally relate to the raw material, natural resource use, the mitigating measures, pollution prevention and management, obtaining of the clearances or approvals under the various other acts, creating infrastructure, both for prevention, abatement and control, and monitoring also. Manpower requirement needs to be defined. The issues raised by the public need to be addressed, and how the funds will be spent, and how the capex need to be identified. So many such things are there in the conditions which are imposed. For an example, in one such project, if you see, this is a format for granting EC. It has certain conditions, like in this space, specific conditions are there that approval from the defense authorities need to be made, so that whether this road meets the required standard for the movement of troops and other things. Raw material, they have to obtain all the regulatory clearances, point number 353. 54, necessary mitigating measures against adverse impact to the water bodies that are to be affected shall be provided. The road profile shall be raised on the low-lying structures to prevent flooding of road. Green belt development shall be undertaken as suggested in the environmental management plan. Then we talk about the rainwater harvesting. So such conditions are imposed. Now, other such conditions can be the no groundwater shall be used for the project. The solid waste generated shall be used for rehabilitating the borough area. So many such conditions are imposed for conservation of the natural resources or for the management of the solid waste that you generate or the other wastewater that you generate in the project. All these are incorporated in this report. There is a specific time period under which the project need to be commenced. Like for the river valley, it's a 30 years period. For the mining, is 30 years, and for other projects, it's a 7-year time period that within which the project activity should start. Now, in case the activity does not start, or the project proponent, because of many reasons beyond his control, was not able to initiate the project or could not start the project, then there is a provision to have an extension of the project, subject to whether the project activities can still be completed within the extended period. And this extended period varies also. For the general projects, it is 3 years. So that means if the EC is granted for a period of 7 years, a further extension of 3 years can be granted, subject to the condition that yes, the project proponent will be able to clear or able to implement the project as per the EC within the extended period of the time. So time requirement for each and every activity in the hierarchy of obtaining environmental clearance is specified. So like stage 1, application for prior EC. Stage 2, TOR conveyed to applicant. Stage 3, public consultation. And the stage 4 is appraisal. So every activity, if you see, we have time period is specified that in case the request is received, in case the authority disagrees with the EAC recommendation, then within 45 days, request for reconsideration by regulatory authority has to be done. if it EC has to consider that within 60 days. So every step and each and every step, the time period is well specified in the hierarchy of obtaining environmental clearance. So we look into the clearances then for category A projects and category B1 projects, which require public hearing, which require all the 4 steps to be taken. The time period, maximum time period specified is 390 days, and the minimum is 255 days. But in the revised notification, which is under consideration by the ministry, this is reduced tremendously and will come around 100 plus days for grant of EC. For category B1 projects without public hearing, so this is 210 days maximum and 300 days with a maximum. And for category B2, we do not require public hearing, which do not require the intermediate step, is 180 days. Maximum time period is specified is 180 days. Now, all these reports, EIA reports, which are prepared, need to be prepared by approved consultants. And now these consultants are approved by NABED. NABED is the National Accreditation Board for Education and Training. And they approve all the environmental consultants, and these consultants are sector specific and depend on the categories of the project, either category A or category B. So a category B consultant cannot take projects under category A, and a consultant approved for cement sector cannot prepare an EIA report for a steel sector. So that means these consultants are sector specific, they are and category specific. So they can only work with those industries for which they are approved. They can only work with those level of operations for which they are approved. So we have category A's, consultants for clearing category A projects and consultant for clearing category B projects. So when we have the environmental clearance, there's a many time misconception. People feel that if a project is granted an EC, environmental clearance, so there is no need to have the forest clearance or the wildlife clearance, which is wrong. If a project has been granted EC and there is a requirement of forest clearance and the wildlife clearance, it needs to be taken in addition to the environmental clearance. Other misconception happens with the consultants and the project proponent is that the project does not warrant any environmental clearance. So even if it is within the coastal regulation zone regulation, so that requirement is not there because I don't need EC, which is again a wrong misconception. Yes, many times people feel that EC and consent to establish and consent to operate are same. No, they are all different as per the existing environmental regime. EC is granted under the Environmental Protection Act, whereas the consent to establish and consent to operate is granted under the Water Act or the Air Act. So in case any industry or proponent has taken EC, he's warrant or he's required to take consent to establish and consent to operate as on date within the existing framework. In future, there is a consideration that yes, the necessity of consent to establish may be taken off once the EC is there. Or there are many other such concepts we looked at and it may happen, but not as on date. Then many times it is felt that since the building permission has been granted, so EC is not required. No, they are two different things. The granting of EC permission by the local municipal corporation is within the Municipal Act, but granting of EC is under the Environmental Protection Act. So there are two different things, and even if the permission has been granted by the municipal corporation, the environmental clearance is still required. When any project comes, now you see we have the project at the impacts of the project during the construction phase, like the roads or highways are constructed. We have the dust coming from the road. We have the tree cuttings. We have the movement of the trucks, everything bringing raw material, using bitumen, heating the bitumen, or if it is asphalt, depending upon the type of salt. So you have a lot of pollution at that. But once the project has been implemented, the impacts start. Now the roads have been constructed and we see Once the roads are constructed, the traffic movement starts, the vehicular pollution starts, and the air quality deteriorates. So this is one example, yes, the projects have on the environment. So when we talk about roads, in the mountain or hilly region, we need to have blasting, air pollution. We change the demography of the area. So landslides occur because we are cutting the trees, we are cutting the mountains, everything up. So this is the natural damage which is occurring to the environment, besides the noise pollution. And when we have the industrial activity starting, if the effluents are not treating, we can have fish kill, we can have mining. From the mining activity, lot of mining waste can come, which or the groundwater depletion starts. So many such challenges come when the project's implementation takes place. This is another project. This is the mining material left in the future. So these are the impacts which are having. So these are the natural resources which we are consuming for the development authorities activities. But what are the natural resources now? Land, water, trees, etc., everything. And then from the nature, we get the raw material, make our production, and all the waste is sent back to the natural resources, deteriorating them, damaging their environment, and spoiling the environment. So there is a need. So these are the environmental impact which we need to look into that. One more thing which is not covered into this is CER. There is a fund known as, we have two types of fund, CSR and CER. CSR is the corporate social responsibility, and CER is a central corporate environmental responsibility. So any project which is coming up need to shell a percentage of money during the construction phase. During the construction phase on capex, capital cost, for activities supporting the local population, like improving the roads, providing water supply, improving health aspects, constructing dispensaries, constructing schools, such activities, but which are not operationing, not meeting the operation cost, but the capital cost. And this amount needs to be spent during the period of construction of the project. So while the project is constructed, before the completion, all this money which is earmarked under CER should have been spent. And the CSR, when it comes, it is to meet the operational cost, or it can meet even the capital cost subsequent to the construction of the project, when the project is in the benefit mode or it is earning money. So this is in addition. The CER depends upon the type of project, whether it is an expansion project or a new project. And the percentage varies roughly 1% of the project cost if the amount is less than 100 crores, and it is about 0.25 crore, which is more than 10,000 crore. So it's a slab under which the money needs to be spent. So this was, in a very brief, about the environmental assessments impact, what studies need to be done, what are the responsibilities of the various agencies, the project proponent, what he has to do, and what are the agencies who can provide such reports to the proponent, which are approved by the NABET. Thank you.